A billionaire walks into his mansion and finds his wife holding a hot iron inches from a maid's face. But when he sees what's around the maid's neck, his blood runs cold. That necklace was supposed to be buried with his dead sister 23 years ago. What he discovers next will change everything. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please comment your view on the story and where you are watching from. Let me tell you a story that still gives me chills whenever I think about it. It's about a man named Michael Carter, one of the richest people in Chicago, and a discovery that would shake his entire world. Picture this: a beautiful Tuesday afternoon in one of those massive mansions in the wealthy part of Chicago. The kind of house you see in magazines, with shiny floors so clean you can see your reflection, and chandeliers that cost more than most people's cars. This was Michael's home. But on this particular day, that beautiful home became the setting for something terrifying. Michael had just come back from a business meeting. He pushed open his front door, loosening his tie, ready to relax. But the moment he stepped inside, he heard screaming. His wife's voice. Then another voice, younger, frightened, begging for mercy. He ran toward the sound, his heart pounding in his chest. And when he reached the living room, he froze. What he saw made his blood run cold. His wife, Jessica Carter, stood in the middle of the room. In her hand was a hot iron, the kind you use to press clothes. Steam was rising from it, hissing like an angry snake. And cowering on the floor, pressed against the sofa with tears streaming down her face, was Sarah Mitchell, their housekeeper. She was young, maybe 25, trembling with fear as Jessica moved closer with that iron. "Jessica, what in God's name are you doing?" Michael's voice exploded through the room like thunder. "Are you trying to kill her?" Jessica spun around, her face twisted with rage. "She stole from me, Michael. My necklace. I caught her wearing it like it was hers." Sarah sobbed harder, shaking her head desperately. "I didn't steal anything, ma'am. I swear on my life. It's mine. I've had it since I was a baby. It's the only thing I have from before the orphanage." "Liar!" Jessica screamed. Her eyes were wild now, filled with something dark and dangerous. "Look at it, Michael. That's our family symbol on that necklace. The letter C. She thinks she can parade around here pretending to be one of us." The iron hissed again. Jessica raised it higher. The other staff members who had gathered in the doorway gasped, frozen with fear. Nobody knew what to do. Michael didn't think. He just moved. He lunged forward and grabbed Jessica's wrist, yanking the iron away from Sarah's face. It missed her by inches. He pulled the cord from the wall, and the iron fell to the marble floor with a sound like a gunshot. The room went completely silent. Sarah curled into herself, shaking so hard she could barely breathe. Michael turned to his wife, his chest heaving, his face pale with shock and anger. "Have you completely lost your mind?" he whispered. "She's lying to you." Jessica pointed at Sarah with a shaking finger. "Ask her where she got that necklace. Go on, ask her before you start defending her against your own wife." Michael's eyes moved to Sarah's neck. There, hanging from a thin gold chain, was a small pendant. His breath caught in his throat. It was a simple piece of jewelry, nothing fancy, just a gold circle with the letter C engraved in the center. But something about it made his heart skip a beat. He knelt down beside Sarah. His voice came out rough, almost afraid. "Where did you get that necklace?" Sarah's lips trembled. "It's all I've ever had, sir. The people at the orphanage said my mother left it with me when I was found on their doorstep. I was just a baby. I don't know anything else about where I came from." Michael reached out and gently took the pendant in his hand, turning it over. His fingers traced the engraving. And then he saw it. A tiny scratch near the bottom edge of the C. His knees almost gave out beneath him. That scratch. He remembered that scratch. This necklace had belonged to his baby sister, Emily Carter. Emily, who had disappeared 23 years ago in a fire that burned their childhood home to the ground. Emily, who he thought had died that terrible night. Emily, whose face he still saw in his nightmares. "Jessica," he said quietly, his voice shaking. "Where did you find this girl? Who hired her?" Jessica crossed her arms. "Through an agency." "What does it matter?" "It matters," Michael said, standing up slowly. His whole body felt heavy. "Because this necklace was buried with my sister 23 years ago." The room seemed to hold its breath. Every person standing there felt the weight of those words. Jessica's face went pale. Her confident expression cracked like glass. "That's impossible," she whispered. Michael looked down at Sarah, really looked at her for the first time. Her eyes, the shape of her face, the way she bit her lower lip when she was scared. It was like looking at a ghost, but a ghost made of flesh and blood. Sir, please, Sarah begged. I don't understand what's happening. I didn't steal anything. I swear I didn't. Michael took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. His entire world was tilting sideways. We're going to find out the truth, he said quietly. I'm calling my lawyer. We're doing a DNA test. You're joking, Jessica said, but her voice had no strength in it. No, Jessica. Michael looked at his wife with eyes full of pain and anger. For once in my life, I'm not joking. In that moment, standing in his beautiful mansion with his wife, his housekeeper, and a necklace from the past, Michael knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The truth was coming, and it would change everything. To understand what happened that day, you need to know about the night that changed Michael's life forever. A night 23 years earlier, when he was just 17 years old. Back then, Michael's family lived in a different house, a beautiful old mansion in the suburbs of Chicago. His father, Robert Carter, was already wealthy, building his business empire. Michael was home from boarding school for the summer, enjoying the break, spending time with his family. He had a little sister named Emily. She was only 4 years old, with bright eyes and a laugh that could light up any room. Michael adored her. She followed him everywhere, calling him Mikey, even though he pretended it annoyed him. She wore a little gold necklace their mother had given her, a simple pendant with the family initial, C, engraved on it. Michael remembered that night like it was yesterday, even though 23 years had passed. It was late August. The air was warm and heavy. He'd gone to bed around midnight, exhausted from playing basketball with friends all day. He woke up to screaming. The smell hit him first. Smoke, thick and choking. Then he heard his mother's voice, panicked, calling for Emily. He jumped out of bed and opened his door. The hallway was filled with black smoke, and he could see the orange glow of flames downstairs. Emily, he shouted, his voice cracking with fear. Emily, where are you? He heard her crying. It was coming from her room at the end of the hall. He ran toward it, covering his mouth with his shirt, squinting through the smoke. The heat was intense, like standing too close to an oven. He reached her door and kicked it open. Emily was standing in the middle of the room, crying, her little hands clutching her necklace. The flames hadn't reached her room yet, but smoke was pouring in through the vents. Mikey, she sobbed. I'm scared. I can't see. I'm coming, Emmy. He tried to get to her, but suddenly there was a terrible cracking sound. Part of the ceiling collapsed between them, sending up a shower of sparks and burning wood. A wooden beam fell, blocking his path. He could see her through the flames, reaching for him, crying his name. He tried to move the beam, but it was too hot, too heavy. His hands burned. He screamed for help, but his father was already dragging him backward, pulling him away. No. Dad, no. She's right there. Michael fought against his father's grip, but he wasn't strong enough. The firefighters will get her, his father shouted. We have to go now. But by the time the firefighters arrived, it was too late. The entire second floor had collapsed. They searched through the ashes for days. They found some of Emily's things, some burned toys, pieces of furniture. They found what they thought were her remains, though there wasn't much left to identify. They found the necklace, or what was left of it, melted and twisted beyond recognition. They buried it in the family plot, along with the small casket that held what little they'd recovered. Michael blamed himself. Every single day for 23 years, he blamed himself. He should have been faster. He should have been stronger. He should have saved her. The guilt ate at him like acid. He threw himself into work, into building his father's business even bigger after his father died 10 years later. He made millions, then billions. He built skyscrapers and shopping centers and hotels. People called him a genius, a visionary. But none of it mattered because he couldn't save his little sister. He met Jessica at a charity event 5 years ago. She was beautiful, charming, sophisticated. She seemed to understand his pain, or at least she pretended to. They married within a year. The media called them Chicago's perfect power couple. But Michael knew the truth. Jessica loved the lifestyle more than she loved him. She loved the parties, the attention, the designer clothes, the jealous looks from other women. She wore their wealth like armor, and she treated anyone beneath her social status like they were invisible. He'd learned to live with it. He'd learned to live with a lot of things. The loneliness, the guilt, the nightmares where he still heard Emily crying his name. But now, standing in his living room, holding that necklace, Michael felt something he hadn't felt in 23 years. Hope. Terrifying, overwhelming hope. What if the necklace they'd buried wasn't Emily's? What if in all that chaos and destruction, someone had made a mistake? What if his sister hadn't died in that fire? What if she'd been alive all this time, and he'd never known? That night, after the confrontation, after Jessica had gone to bed angry and silent, Michael sat alone in his study. He pulled out an old photo album, one he hadn't opened in years. He turned the pages slowly, looking at pictures of Emily. Her smile, her eyes, the way she tilted her head when she was curious about something. Then he thought about Sarah, the young woman trembling on his living room floor. Her eyes, her face, the way she'd looked at him, confused and frightened. He saw it now, the resemblance. It was faint, but it was there. "Please," he whispered to the empty room. "Please let it be true." He picked up his phone and called his lawyer. "Tom, it's Michael. I need your help with something. Something important. I need a DNA test done immediately, tonight if possible. I need to know if the woman working in my house is my sister." There was silence on the other end. Then Tom said, "Michael, are you sure about this?" "No," Michael admitted. "But I have to know. I've spent 23 years wondering if I could have done more. If there's even a chance she's alive, I can't ignore it." "I'll make the calls," Tom said quietly. "I'll have someone there within the hour." Michael hung up and stared at the necklace sitting on his desk. In the lamplight, it seemed to glow, like it was trying to tell him something. Like it had been waiting all these years for this moment. For the truth to finally come out. The hours that followed were some of the longest of Michael's life. Longer than the night of the fire. Longer than the day they'd buried what they thought were Emily's remains. He'd arranged for Sarah to stay in one of the guest rooms. She was too shaken to go back to the staff quarters, and honestly, Michael wanted her close. He needed to protect her, especially from Jessica. His wife had locked herself in their bedroom, refusing to speak to him. He could hear her moving around in there, pacing back and forth. He knew she was angry, but he didn't care. Not anymore. Around midnight, a team arrived from the private medical testing company Tom had contacted. They were discreet, professional. They took samples from both Michael and Sarah, barely speaking, and left within 20 minutes. "Results in 72 hours, the lead technician said. "We'll rush it as fast as we can." 72 hours. 3 days to find out if his entire life had been built on a lie. Sarah sat in the guest room, wrapped in a blanket, looking lost. Michael knocked gently on the door frame. "Can I come in?" She nodded, wiping her eyes. He sat down in the chair across from her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Her voice was small, fragile. "I'm nobody. I'm just a housekeeper. Why would you risk your marriage for me?" Michael leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Tell me about your life, Sarah. Tell me about growing up in the orphanage." She looked surprised by the question but began to speak. "I don't remember much from when I was really little. My first clear memory is being at St. Catherine's Orphanage on the south side. I was maybe 3 or 4. The nuns were kind, but there were so many of us, you know? Never enough attention to go around. Did they tell you anything about how you got there?" "Only what I told you earlier. Someone left me on the doorstep late one night with just this necklace and a blanket. No note. No name. Nothing. Sister Margaret said I was maybe 18 months old when they found me. They named me Sarah because it was the name day of Saint Sarah when I arrived." Michael's throat tightened. 18 months old. The fire had happened when Emily was 4, but if she'd been lost, confused, if someone had found her. "What was it like growing up there?" he asked. Sarah smiled faintly. "It wasn't terrible. We had food, a roof over our heads. The nuns taught us to read and write. They made sure we went to school. But it was always temporary, you know? Every kid there was waiting to be chosen, waiting for a family to want them." "Did anyone ever want to adopt you?" Her smile faded. "A few times people came to look at us. But I was too old by the time most families came through. Everyone wants babies or really young children. By the time I was 7, 8, I'd stopped hoping. I just focused on surviving, on being good, on not causing trouble." "What happened when you aged out of the system?" "I got a job at a diner when I was 18. Worked there for 5 years, saved every penny I could. Then I saw an ad for a position through a domestic staffing agency. Better pay, better conditions. I thought maybe I'd finally have some stability." She laughed bitterly. "Guess I was wrong about that." Michael felt something crack inside his chest. This woman, if she really was Emily, had spent her entire life alone, unwanted, working just to survive, while he'd lived in mansions and built an empire. "I'm sorry," he said, "for everything that happened today, for everything Jessica did to you." That should never have happened. It's okay, Sarah said automatically, then caught herself. Actually, no. It's not okay. She tried to burn me with an iron because she didn't like that I was wearing my own necklace. That's not okay at all. You're right. It's not. And whatever happens with this test, I want you to know something. You didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that. Sarah looked at him with those eyes, those familiar eyes that haunted him. Do you really think I could be your sister? I don't know, Michael admitted. But that necklace, the scratch on it, I remember making that scratch. Emily and I were playing in the garden, and she dropped it on the stone path. It got a little scrape right there on the edge. I felt so guilty because Mom had just given it to her. But Mom said it made it special, that now it was unique. Sarah's hand went to the pendant, her fingers tracing the small mark. I used to wonder about this scratch. I'd make up stories about how it got there. In my favorite story, my mother and I were running through a field of flowers, and she was laughing, and the necklace got caught on a branch. It was sunny and beautiful, and we were happy. Michael's eyes filled with tears. There was a garden, he said softly. At our old house. Emily loved playing there. Roses, magnolias, and these beautiful old oak trees. She'd run around for hours, making up games, talking to imaginary friends. They sat together in the quiet of the night, two strangers who might be family, sharing pieces of a puzzle that had been scattered for 23 years. Downstairs, Jessica finally emerged from the bedroom. She found Michael's assistant and demanded to know what was happening. He's having a DNA test done, the assistant said simply. Jessica's face went white. This is insane. You all realize this is insane, right? He's throwing away everything for some girl's sob story. But nobody answered her. They'd all seen what she'd done. They'd all seen her raise that iron. And in that moment, whatever loyalty the staff had felt toward Jessica Carter evaporated like smoke. The truth was coming, and it would spare no one. 3 days felt like 3 years. Michael barely slept. He'd go to his office but couldn't focus on work. Every phone call made his heart jump. Every notification on his phone made him check to see if it was Tom with the results. Jessica had moved into one of the other guest bedrooms. She wasn't speaking to him at all now. When they passed each other in the hallways of their own home, she'd look away, her jaw tight, her eyes hard. The staff whispered. They'd never seen the Carters like this. Sarah stayed in the guest room, afraid to leave, afraid of what might happen next. Michael had told her she didn't have to work, didn't have to do anything but rest. But he'd see her sometimes, standing at the window, looking out at the city, probably wondering what was going to happen to her life. On the third day, Tom called. The results are in, he said. I'm bringing them over now. Michael's hand shook as he hung up the phone. This was it. This was the moment that would either confirm his hope or crush it completely. He gathered everyone in his study. Jessica came reluctantly, her arms crossed over her chest. Sarah sat in the corner, pale and quiet. Some of the household staff stood near the doorway, unable to look away from what was unfolding. Tom arrived with a sealed envelope. He looked at Michael seriously. Are you ready for this? Just open it, Jessica snapped. Let's end this ridiculous drama. Tom broke the seal and pulled out the document. He scanned it quickly, and Michael saw something change in his face. Surprise. Then something like wonder. Well, Michael's voice came out as barely a whisper. Tom looked up, first at Michael, then at Sarah. According to this DNA analysis, there's a 99.9% probability that Sarah Mitchell and Michael Carter share a biological parent-child relationship. He paused. I'm sorry, that's not right. Let me read it again. Sibling relationship. They share both parents. Sarah Mitchell is Michael Carter's biological sister. The room went completely still. Nobody moved. Nobody even seemed to breathe. Then Jessica laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was the sound of someone breaking. You're lying. That's impossible. They said she was dead. They buried her. They buried someone, Tom said quietly. But it wasn't Emily Carter. Michael couldn't move. His brain couldn't process what he was hearing. 23 years. 23 years of guilt, of grief, of thinking he'd failed her. And she'd been alive the whole time. Emily, he whispered. Sarah, Emily, looked at him with tears streaming down her face. I don't understand. I don't understand any of this. Michael crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. She was stiff at first, confused, but then she just collapsed against him, sobbing. And Michael held his sister, the sister he thought he'd lost, and cried like he hadn't cried since he was 17 years old. I'm sorry, he kept saying. I'm so sorry. I tried to save you. I tried so hard. I'm sorry I didn't find you sooner. Emily didn't know what to say. Her whole life, her entire identity, had just been turned upside down. She wasn't Sarah Mitchell, orphan nobody. She was Emily Carter. She had a family. She had a brother who was crying for her. Jessica stood frozen, watching them. And in that moment, she realized what she'd done. She'd tried to hurt, maybe even kill, Michael's sister. His baby sister who'd been lost for 23 years. The woman who'd survived against all odds. Michael, Jessica said, her voice shaking. I didn't know. You have to believe me. I didn't know who she was. Michael looked up at her, his face wet with tears. But his eyes were cold. You didn't care who she was. You saw a woman you thought was beneath you, and you tried to hurt her because you were jealous. Because I showed her basic human kindness. I was angry. I thought she was trying to take my place. Trying to. Trying to what, Jessica? Work for a living? Exist in the same space as you? She wasn't trying to take anything from you. But you tried to take everything from her. You tried to take her dignity, her safety, maybe even her life. Jessica's face crumbled. Please don't do this. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. Mistakes? Michael's voice rose. You held a hot iron to my sister's face. That's not a mistake. That's assault. That's attempted murder. Emily, still in Michael's arms, spoke quietly. What happens now? Michael pulled back and looked at her. Now I make sure you're safe. Now I make sure you get everything you should have had for the past 23 years. Now I make sure justice is done. He turned to Tom. Call the police. Press charges. Full charges. Attempted assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated battery, whatever applies. I want everything documented. Jessica's eyes went wide with panic. Michael, no. Please. Think about what this will do to our reputation. Think about the business. I don't care about reputation, Michael said flatly. And the business will be fine. What I care about is that you tried to hurt my sister. My sister, Jessica. Do you understand that? The person I thought was dead for 23 years has been alive this whole time, and the first thing my wife did when she met her was try to burn her. Jessica began to cry, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone realizing they'd lost. You're choosing her over me. Yes, Michael said simply. Every single time. Because she's my family. Real family. Not the fake, polished version you and I pretended to be. The police arrived within the hour. As they led Jessica away in handcuffs, photographers who'd somehow gotten wind of the story gathered outside the gates. By morning, it would be all over the news. But Michael didn't care. He sat with Emily, his sister, and started to tell her about their childhood, about their parents, about the family she'd lost. And slowly, piece by piece, they began to put together a life that had been shattered 23 years ago. The trial was a media circus. Chicago had never seen anything like it. A billionaire's wife arrested for attacking a maid who turned out to be his long-lost sister. It sounded like something from a movie, but it was real. And everyone wanted a piece of the story. Jessica's lawyers tried everything. They claimed she'd been under emotional stress. They said she'd acted impulsively, that she'd never actually intended to hurt anyone. They painted her as a victim of jealousy, a woman driven to temporary insanity by her husband's apparent attention to another woman. But the evidence was overwhelming. The burned sleeve of Emily's uniform, the witness statements from the staff, the photos of the scene, and most damning of all, the video from the security cameras that captured the whole confrontation. The jury took less than 4 hours to find her guilty. Aggravated assault. Attempted battery with a deadly weapon. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in prison. As they led her away, Jessica turned one last time to look at Michael, sitting in the gallery beside Emily. Her eyes were full of hate and regret in equal measure. But Michael didn't look away. He held her gaze until she disappeared through the doors. Is it wrong that I don't feel bad for her? Emily asked quietly. No, Michael said. It's not wrong at all. The weeks following the trial were strange and wonderful and difficult all at once. Emily, who'd spent 25 years thinking she had no family, suddenly had to learn how to be part of one again. Michael hired the best therapists money could buy to help her process everything. The trauma of the fire she couldn't remember. The life she'd lived not knowing who she really was. The violent attack that had paradoxically led her back to her family. They did DNA tests on their parents' remains to confirm what they already knew. Emily Carter had somehow survived the fire. The best theory investigators could piece together was that in the chaos of the evacuation, someone, maybe a firefighter or a neighbor, had grabbed her and gotten her out. In all the confusion, with so many people running and screaming, she'd gotten separated. Maybe whoever saved her had been injured or killed in the collapse. Maybe they'd left her at the orphanage and disappeared. They'd probably never know for sure. But the details didn't matter as much as the result. She was alive. She was home. Michael moved her into the mansion, giving her an entire wing to herself. He wanted her to feel safe, to have her own space. But most evenings, he'd find her in the kitchen, talking with the cook, or in the garden, or sitting in what had become her favorite room, the library. One evening, about 3 months after the trial, Michael found her there, looking at old photo albums. "That's you," he said, pointing to a picture of a tiny girl with pigtails. "You were maybe 3 there. Dad had just built you that treehouse you were obsessed with." Emily smiled, touching the photo gently. "I wish I could remember. Maybe you will in time. Or maybe you'll just make new memories. Better ones." She looked up at him. "I've been thinking about what to do next. I can't just sit here in this house forever." "You can do whatever you want," Michael said. "You want to go to school? Travel? Start a business? Whatever you want, I'll support you." "I want to help people," Emily said. "People like me. Kids in the system. Kids who think nobody wants them." Michael felt pride swell in his chest. "Tell me more." "I was thinking we could start a foundation. Use your resources to help kids aging out of foster care. Give them job training, education support, housing assistance. All the things I wish I'd had." "The Emily Carter Foundation," Michael said. "I love it. Actually," she said, smiling, "I was thinking the Mitchell Carter Foundation. Sarah Mitchell was who I was for 25 years. I don't want to forget her. She survived a lot. She deserves to be remembered too." Michael's eyes filled with tears for what felt like the 100th time since finding her. "That's perfect." They launched the foundation 6 months later. The press conference was huge. Michael stood at the podium with Emily beside him and told their story. He didn't hide anything. The fire, the loss, the 23 years of grief, and the miraculous reunion. "My sister survived something that should have killed her," he said. "She survived being lost. She survived growing up alone. And she survived someone trying to hurt her. But she didn't just survive. She remained kind. She remained hopeful. She remained good. And now she wants to use her second chance to give other kids a chance too." The crowd erupted in applause. Donations poured in. Within a year, the Mitchell Carter Foundation had helped over 500 young people transition out of foster care with job training, scholarships, and housing support. On the first anniversary of the day Michael had walked in to find Jessica threatening Emily with the iron, the siblings visited the family cemetery together. They stood before their parents' graves, the Chicago skyline visible in the distance. Emily placed flowers on both graves. "Mom, Dad, I'm home," she whispered. "I know it took a long time, but I'm finally home." Michael put his arm around her shoulders. "They'd be so proud of you." "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us," Emily said. "We found each other. Even after all those years, even through all that pain, we found each other." As they walked back toward the car, the sun setting behind them, Emily stopped and looked back at the mansion on the hill. "You know what's funny?" she said. "I spent my whole life wondering where I belonged. Wondering if anyone would ever want me. And I was right here all along. In this city. Just waiting to come home." Michael squeezed her hand. "You're home now. And I promise you, Emily. I promise you'll never be lost again." And as they drove away, the city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness, both of them felt something they hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Sometimes the people we think we've lost are just waiting to be found. Sometimes justice takes time, but it comes. And sometimes, against all odds, families torn apart by tragedy find their way back together. This is their story. The story of a brother who never stopped grieving, a sister who never stopped surviving, and a truth that refused to stay buried. If this story touched your heart, remember, there are thousands of real children and young adults in foster care right now, waiting for their chance. Waiting to be seen. Waiting to be found. Maybe you could be the one who helps bring them home.